Welcome to our new series of webinars designed to help you navigate your way through some of the mental health challenges of lockdown. I'm Gillian Nissim and I'm the founder of Workingmums.co.uk. And as well as a job site offering part-time and full-time flexible roles, we're also a community site providing advice and support to parents and employers and sharing best practice. Specifically at the moment, we're focused on delivering advice and support to help parents and employers navigate the challenges presented by lockdown. And mental health is a huge issue. And in our last webinar, we focused on mental well-being of children. That was with Dr. Amanda Gummer. But it's obviously not just children who are impacted. We all are to some extent. And through workingmums.co.uk, we're hearing a lot at the moment from parents who are feeling, for example, that they're losing control, that they're overthinking situations and worrying about so many things, too many things. So today I'm really pleased that we're joined by Claire Cole, founder of Movement for Mums. And welcome, Claire. Claire herself has suffered from mental health issues linked to becoming a parent, and she says that physical exercise is a big part of dealing with these issues. So she's going to talk to us today about how we can strengthen our minds through looking after ourselves physically. And I'll also be asking Claire some of the questions that we've had in from our readers. So welcome again, Claire, and thanks for joining us today. And I wondered if we could start with you maybe telling us a bit more about some of the struggles you faced and what the steps you took to overcome them.
Oh, great. Okay, well, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm going to go all the way back to my 20s. I'm 44, I'm a mum, I've got two boys, aged 4 and 7. But in my early 20s, I was agoraphobic and I had quite a lot of anxiety. And what I found back then is that I was looking for a way to kind of help heal myself. And I always kind of found that exercise and fitness was a really big part of that journey in terms of that healing. And as I went into my 30s and my first son was born, this is 7 years ago, I was on the verge of, I had postnatal depression, but I was probably more on the verge of postnatal psychosis. And I found it really kind of hard to be able to leave the house again. I was really quite physically affected by my birth. I was incontinent for around about 8 weeks. And I started to kind of have all of those kind of phobias and fears again that I'd had in my 20s when I was agoraphobic. Only this time I've got a tiny baby as well to kind of deal with. And one of the things that I did, I was breastfeeding and I found it really hard to do any exercise. I also, like most new mums, we don't have any energy. We're so tired. We don't know what is morning, what's night, which way the day is up. And so I wasn't doing any form of exercise at all. And probably around about 3 months postpartum, I went back to the gym and I went for an hour and I thought, wow, that was amazing. You know what? I had an hour on my own. And slowly, as I started to do more of that, I started to find that my mind was increasingly starting to heal. And so I kind of thought back to when I was in my 20s and what happened to me at that moment and how exercise had played a really big part of that. And so when I went back to work and I went to an investment bank when my second son was 6 months old, so he was quite tiny when I went back to work, and I got there and there was nothing for me really returning from maternity, mentally or physically. There was probably a little bit more mentally, but not a great deal physically. And so I found myself there, 12-hour days, a tiny baby at home, the guilt mounting up, the pressure of actually thinking, what am I doing? Why have I gone back out the door to work? And, and I was somebody who had that tendency again with postnatal depression, and we thought it would be a good thing for me to go back out to work rather than being at home all day, every day with the kids and with the baby. And so it was almost kind of a precautionary measure, but I was not prepared in any way for how that made me feel. And so at that moment, probably around about 3 or 4 years ago, I thought, you know what, I'd really like to create something for other mums, to help other mums find a way to kind of do some form of movement, because by the time I was back at work, I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't going to the gym, there was no time. And therefore I was starting to regress mentally. I thought, wouldn't it be great if I could just create something that coupled fitness or movement, intuitive movement, with mental health to help kind of strengthen and help us feel good in our minds through strengthening our bodies. And so I created Movement for Mums, and then I carried on working full time until about 6 months ago. And probably around about October, November time last year, I said to my husband, you know what, it's now or never. It's believing me to do this, or I just have to, you know, kind of give up the dream, because I really do think I can make a difference. And so before coronavirus, I launched a membership which was free, and it's still free at the moment, in terms of I live stream classes every day, exercise classes which help strengthen our mind and their body weight. They don't need any equipment, they don't need any type of space. And I do that because I think that if we can just try and get some movement every day into our lives, and it can make us feel so much better. And so that's kind of where Movement for Mums was born. And of course now we've got this industry has gone absolutely crazy with live streaming fitness, and actually it feels a bit too much, because now every corner you turn on social media is a live stream workout. And actually now we've got the guilt. We don't want to work out if we can't fit it in. You know, we're at home now, we're being, you know, working mum, house, you know, stay at home mum, homeschooling mum, and actually it's even less time for us at the moment. And then we're just literally obliterated by all these live workouts. So it can be hard to know what to do that's good for you and that will help you. And so that's kind of that's my story, in a very kind of shortened version of my story. And that's why I created this Movement for Mums, and that's what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to help other mums like me find a way to fit some form of movement into their lives to help boost their mental health.
No, that's amazing, Claire, and congratulations. I mean, it's what a great story and what a great outcome. And we'll talk more about your workouts, I think, shortly. And I mean, you know, the website is fantastic. And also apologies for the phone. That's the joys of working at home. On the webinar, hopefully no more. So through what you're doing right now, and you know, you mentioned, which is fantastic, you're offering your sessions for free. You've got a real I guess community out there, and in terms of the mums that you're coming into contact with, what would you say the main issues that they've been bringing up about the current situation?
So I think one of the questions I get a lot is, what exercise is safe? And so, because we are bombarded with so many HIIT classes, bodyweight classes, you know, literally at every corner, nobody quite knows what's safe. And I think it really depends upon what you've done previously. So if you're somebody who's used to kind of going out to the gym, you're a runner, you're a netball player, and you've got a level of fitness, then great, you know, maybe that when you've got a ton of energy, go smash that HIIT class. But if you your children are young, you haven't a lot of time or energy, and you haven't recently been doing a lot of exercise, I'd probably say I wouldn't start with something like a HIIT class. I'd probably try to kind of build up to that, and I'd be a little bit kinder to my body. So I get that question a lot. And also time, how do I fit it in? And I say to women, we are so used to having some form of movement in our daily life, which is just part of our daily life. So we might walk to the bus for work, we might walk to the tube. We, you know, if we've got a little one, we're out walking with a buggy, going to kind of the high street. And so there are always ways in our day that we're moving, and suddenly we're behind closed doors and we're not moving in the same way, and we can't go out and there is nowhere to go. And although we can do that daily piece of exercise, often if we've got children, it's focusing that exercise on the children, not focusing it on ourselves. And so people always ask me, you know, how do I do it? How do I do some form of exercise? How do I find the time for it? And what I say to them is that it's okay to take some time out for you during the day. It's okay to actually say, kids, you know what, you need the TV for half an hour while I do this for me. But also what you could do is you could think about every hour setting a timer and thinking, right, I'm going to get up now from where I'm sitting. I'm going to get up from my desk and I'm going to walk up and down the stairs 10 times every hour. That way I get my steps in. So I start to think about my 10,000 steps again. Or I could just, when I'm boiling the kettle, having a cup of tea, I could do 10 bodyweight squats. So there are ways that you could, in your day, start to kind of set alarms and reminders, actually just to get up. If I'm changing a nappy, can I put the nappies in the furthest place away from me in the house or the flat? Can I change the nappy upstairs every time I have to change it? If I'm feeding the kids, you know, can I feed them outside? So I've got to walk everything from the kitchen outside. How can we just try to bring back some of that exercise of what we call is daily life? And in terms of trying to fit in an actual kind of class, do something short. I don't know about you, but I don't have an hour. I don't have 45 minutes to myself daily. But what I could do is I could set the alarm 20 minutes early in the morning, and I could put my leggings out on the end of the bed, so I haven't even got to hunt around for them, pull them on, and go downstairs. And I could, switch on a YouTube or there's lots of live streams happening all at different times, and I could do 20 minutes of stretching, 20 minutes of yoga, resistance bands. It doesn't always have to be about high impact. And a lot of us mums, the word high impact and jumping, it scares us because our pelvic floors maybe aren't quite in the place that they used to be for that type of impact exercise. And I think when we think about home workouts, we think about jumping and HIIT classes because we think that's all that you can do. But you don't need to undertake those type of workouts unless you want to. I think it's just about trying to find a way to fit in some movement that makes you feel good.
I mean, that's the really helpful tips and a really different way of thinking about it, and not thinking it's got to be an hour. I think that's so helpful, because somehow in amongst not having to commute and everything else, we've got homeschooling, we've got everyone in the house, we're fitting in work. So I think, having those little chunks and thinking it that way is really helpful, really helpful. And I guess, I mean, you've got that kind of motivation side as well. There's the, the knowledge that exercise is really helpful and good for our mental well-being. But what if you haven't got the motivation to do it at home? Might have the time, but you're not in a gym with friends or in classes with other people. How do you get that motivation?
So I think my first rule is it's got to be something that you enjoy. Okay, so I think you've got to think about, what is it that you enjoyed doing in the gym? Was it just the fact that you were doing it with other people? So why don't you get your friends on a Zoom call, and why don't you do a class together one evening? So make it social, so it can still be a team sport. I think that what would be a really good idea is to, if you can do some exercise, write down in your phone afterwards one word and describe how you're feeling. This is incredibly powerful, because next time you think, oh, I really don't feel like it, I haven't got the energy, go back to your phone and look at that one word, and you'll remember that feeling that you created for yourself. So you will remind yourself of how it felt and how you felt good, and you thought, yeah, you know what, I'm a little bit better equipped to take on the day to day. In my house, the screaming, the hair pulling, the biting, the spilt juice is all going to be there every single morning, because my two boys are crazy and literally, love each other, but just fight all the time. But I might be a little bit better equipped to deal with that if I've done something for myself. So I try and remind myself of how I felt when I did work out, and I try and do that with a word in my phone that I can make a note of, and go back to and remind myself of that feeling. But also, what I'm going to say now is controversial. You know what? We don't always want to work. We don't have to do it every day. And if you don't feel like it, why not be kind to yourself? Don't have the guilt, because exercise should never make you feel bad. It should only make you feel good. And I think sometimes we get stressed by our workouts. Do you know what I mean? When you do workout, you get that kind of euphoria, and you almost think, oh my God, that was addictive, I loved that. And then you don't do it for another week and you feel the guilt. And actually, if we go back to thinking about movement as intuitive and actually just moving our bodies a bit more, we lose that whole cycle of euphoria and guilt. And so actually a workout stops making us feel bad, and it actually starts to make us feel good. So I think you've got to take a couple of steps around the mindset around exercise. And it's incredibly hard to motivate yourself when you're at home to do something. But I like routine. So I think, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it at this time every single day, and neither, hell nor coronavirus is going to stop me, because that's my routine now. And I've scheduled it into my day. And I think that's another way to actually say, right, at 12:30, I'm going to stop what I'm doing and I'm going to do half an hour's worth of stretching. Doesn't have to be a HIIT class again. It doesn't have to be high impact, but if you've got the energy, then go smash it. Don't hold yourself back. But if you don't, and I'm incredibly tired in the morning at the moment, I don't know about you, but I'm really struggling to wake up. The alarm's set, the kids are sleeping later, everybody's just, I don't know what it is. Is it because we can't leave the house that we're suddenly regressing a bit more into ourselves? And so I feel very tired. But remember this, exercise gives you energy. It releases a whole batch of endorphins in your brain, like popping candy. Do you remember that stuff when you were a kid that used to kind of fizzle? start to work out, it all starts to kind of fizzle in your brain. And what it does is it washes away all the anxious and the stress chemicals, and it fills your brain with happy chemicals, which is why you get that euphoria feeling after you've worked out. But scientists believe that we are better able to make decisions once we've worked out. So I like the middle of the day. And another reason is because we start to produce melatonin, and melatonin is the sleep hormone. And so the later in the day we work out, not too late in the evening, we start to generate higher levels of melatonin, and that makes us all sleepy and relaxed at night, and that helps us kind of sleep. And so I like to kind of think about all of those benefits that come with exercise, and when I've got a whole big basket of benefits, then it starts to persuade me. So I think it's a case of just being able to kind of do a couple of little things like that that tweak your mindset, and not to feel guilty when you don't want to do it, and listen to your body, because it's only fun and it's only enjoyable when it's actually something that you want to do. Don't force yourself and don't punish yourself to do it. Does that help?
Oh, that's brilliant. That's really good. And I think it is, it's having the routine. It's time in the day for headspace as well, isn't it? If you're working out, you're not thinking about everything else that's going on. And yeah, no, that's great.
You could just involve the kids as well. So if you can't do it on your own, I like to turn every exercise into an animal. So if I'm doing a squat jump, my kids are doing a frog jump. If I'm doing a plank on the floor, or maybe a walking plank on the floor, for them it's a crocodile. So again, just think about how you get them involved. And if you're out doing your kind of daily exercise, we do this thing where everybody's got to sprint to the nearest lamppost, or who's quickest to the next lamppost, and suddenly it becomes interval training. So it doesn't actually, you don't have to overthink this stuff.
And it's also, I mean, it's a way of fitting it in with the kids as well, which is, can be a challenge, which is brilliant, and getting them involved in the exercise too, which I think is really good. And what about, I mean, at the moment, obviously we're allowed out for an hour a day, or, if we've got a garden, what happens, if we haven't got a lot of space to exercise in, what would you suggest?
So I think all you need is enough space to kind of kick your arms and kick your legs out. Okay, because a lot of workouts you can do, you're almost doing it in a very kind of confined space. So what I would do is I would think about where I live, look around the house, look around the flat, find a quiet corner if you can. That's what I do, and actually just move bits and pieces out of the way and just set it up and leave it, so that you don't find yourself thinking, oh, there's no room to do this, I've got to kind of the chairs in the way, and actually see if you can find a little place that you just partition off for you, because in reality you can do a whole core workout standing. You can do a total kind of body workout by standing. It's helpful if you can move your arms out and you can kick your legs up and forwards and backwards, but actually you don't need anything more than that. And if you want to make it harder, then let's increase the repetitions, let's decrease the rest time, let's pick up some one day cans of sweet corn, tomorrow can of beans. Let's use what we've got around the house, and water bottles, because you can make quite effective weights from water bottles as well. And again, you can be doing some curls with some water bottles, which was just as effective as using the weights in a gym. But again, you're not using, and how much space? I'm doing it sat down. You could do a chair workout. So you could be just watching the TV and you could do some nice little circles with your arms. You try this for a minute or so and your arms will really start to tire, and then start pulling them into a V. Now I'm sat doing that. I'm not even standing up. So I could be at my desk and again, opening up my chest and some lovely kind of chest openers, and you can see there that I don't need any space at all for that. But so I think it's just about adapting what we might normally do for the space that we're in, and I think that there's a great deal that you can do from a bodyweight perspective, or with implements around the house, in a very small space. I'm on a chair now. I could stand up and I could squat down to the level of the chair. So if I'm at a desk all day, every hour I could just do some squats on my chair. I could be in a meeting, and maybe not a video call. People might kind of be looking at me thinking, what is she doing? But I'm sure nobody's really old, are they? If you say, I'm just doing a few squats, you know what, come on team, let's energize. Who's going to think any less of you? Because you know what, we're all in this unfamiliar situation at the moment. So I don't personally think that space needs to be an issue. I think there's a lot that you can do. I think it's just, again, things have to be a little bit more planned, and you've probably just got to be a little bit more scheduled. I really like the ideas where we plan out our meals for the week. Well, why don't we just plan out our movement for the week as well? What am I going to do this week to help me move my body and make me feel good?
Brilliant. That's problem solved. And actually, just on the subject of meals, seems to be not uncommon that some of us having issues with overeating, eating unhealthily. I mean, how do we manage that?
Yeah, I mean, come on, aren't we literally doing all of that? So I am absolutely the same. I found myself in the kitchen earlier grazing. So what I've done is I've introduced kitchen hours. So you get breakfast between 7:30 and 8:30, snacks at 10, lunch between 12 and 1, snacks at 3, dinner between 5 and 6 if you're the kids. And you don't eat within those hours, you get water. And so now everyone knows that the kitchen's off bounds at those times. So even for me, I can't go in and start snacking and grazing around. So I know that I need to eat in those meal times. I always used to take my lunch to work. So on a Sunday night, I would pack up my lunch for maybe 2 or 3 days. So why have I stopped doing it in lockdown? So again, you could make on a Sunday everybody's kind of lunches, and it's nice warm weather now. We can eat cold food for lunch. It's not like in the winter when you feel like you need something warm and kind of hearty. Again, you could get those lunches prepared, because again, if it's there, you're less likely to go and look for something else if it's already prepared. When you're cutting vegetables at night for dinner, cut some extra vegetables, leave them cut ready in the fridge. I think everything is about convenience at the moment and ease. Wine, I mean, the wine consumption is definitely up, I think, in most households. I'm buying miniatures. So if I have a wine, I have a miniature and I don't open another one. So I'm only having one. So I don't have the big bottle and I keep topping myself up, because it's really easy to do that at the moment. What else can we do in terms of food? We can eat intuitively. So if we've got to have the treats. So if a Friday night for you is a curry, then you know what? Recreate the curry. You might still be able to get takeaways in some people's areas. Where I live, there aren't any kind of deliveries, so we get it frozen and we just bung it in the oven, and we do that, and we have that with the kids, and that's our kind of Friday night. So we have the treats, because eating needs to be, I think, intuitive, because I think, you know, eating for me is all about kind of, it's not fuel, it's about enjoyment. And so if I want it, I go and eat it. And so if I really find I'm really, you know, got really that sweet tooth, then nut butters. I like an almond butter, or a cashew butter, or something that's maybe a bit healthier. And we should think about some long release type foods as well, oat cakes with some nut butter. And try to think about the healthier snacks. And the fact that we're not going out shopping every day, we can probably be a little bit more organised, depending on what you can get, but you can probably be a bit more organised about what we eat. So having a little schedule for the week, this is what we're eating for lunch, this is what we're eating for dinner, so that it's planned out. But I think, you know what, we've got to have a little bit of enjoyment. So, you know, chocolate, try and go for the darker version, the slightly healthier version. You know what, but if you want it, then just go and eat it, because the less we have of it and the more we graze around it. Oh, I'll have an apple, that didn't do it for me. Oh, I might have, you know, something else that's kind of healthy, but it's not really doing it for me. And before you know it, you've eaten more than you would have eaten if you'd just gone and had the bar of chocolate. So I am a bit of a believer in having, again, some boundaries and having a routine with food, but also having the enjoyment factor as well. And if you can, go for, you know, like I say, the wine miniatures, and just get things cut in advance. You know, on a Sunday night, just get all those veggies blasted and cut and into pots, and so they're ready, and you just give one to the kids, and that's it. And also, everyone in my house has got to eat the same meal. So when I cook, for dinner, even whether my husband and I, we may not eat with the kids, but it's already cooked and it's in the oven, and so I don't cook again. And there's no I don't like it. There's no, you eat it, because that's it. It's locked down. That's the rules. I tell them it's the rules, and so I get less if I don't want it. And so that's how I'm kind of managing it. But I know it's super hard, because it is really hard, because we're bored, aren't we? And we keep grazing. And again, you know, if you can, try not to buy it. Try not to buy as much of it, because if it's not in the cupboard, then we can't eat it. But it's hard for the kids, because my kids to eat all the time. But the kitchen hours have really worked. You know, they've really instilled in them now. And even when they're screaming at me saying I want snacks, I'm like, no, 10 o'clock is snacks, that's it. And then it's something healthy with maybe something a bit nicer. So I try and give them a bit of a balance with it, so they're not just getting vegetables or carrots or things like that, because then they're just going to kind of go crazy, that they don't like it. So there's got to be, you've got to eat the carrots, and then you can have the Pringles. You know, it's got to be that kind of balance. And that's
brilliant.
Yeah,
thank you.
Different, aren't we, in terms of the way we're coping with it? But I definitely you know, feel myself doing exactly those same things, and that's what's worked for me. But don't worry if it doesn't work every day. You know what, don't have the guilt. It's just, there's too much going on for us to feel guilty about these things. So I think you've just got to do what makes you feel good. But if eating lots of food that's not good for you doesn't make you feel good, then that's why you need to kind of try and implement some changes so that you do feel
Brilliant.
good.
Great
And I
tip.
let me tell you, I think about nothing but food all day long. I literally, you know, if someone says what you're having on to eat on Thursday, I'm like, oh, I planned fish, and you know, I love thinking about food. So I'm struggling.
Oh, I know. And there's that adjustment too of having everybody in the house for every meal, and that kind of three things, isn't it, to start with?
Must be saving so much money in other ways, but my food bill is like through the roof, and it's the constant keeping up with the kind of the fresh stuff as well. So I really love, you know, a nutritionist gave me a tip. She says, you know what, if you make a smoothie and you want to be a bit healthier, instead of having a banana as the basis for it, why not use some frozen cauliflower?
Oh,
Wow, what
wow.
that is! It doesn't
I
taste
hadn't
any
thought of
different,
that.
healthier, and it's the same texture. There you go, a little tip. You know, it sounds disgusting, but actually it's absolutely fine. And you buy frozen florets in the freezer, and you don't have to defrost them, and then just swoosh them up instead of the banana. So there are little things that we can implement.
Wow.
You're going
That's
to
a
do it
good
now.
one. I haven't had that one, but I have to give that a go. Moving back to kind of, sorry,
Test is to feed it to the kids and see if they notice.
good idea. I really like that. My non-cauliflower eaters, but yeah. Moving back to kind of exercise, I guess now, and help with anxiety. One of the things we're hearing a lot about too is the anxiety that pregnant women are feeling right now, worried about giving birth in the midst of a pandemic, you know, and there's so much to think about. And then once they've had their babies, how quickly can they get back to exercise, and what can they do in a lockdown situation? So yeah, quite a lot going on there for people who are expecting.
Yeah, so I think that having a baby is it's a very nerve-wracking time. And I don't think it matters whether you're a first time, second, third, or fourth time mum. Every time, I think that there is an element of anxiety around having a baby. And I think what's not helping that at the moment is worrying about whether, you know, you can even take a partner into hospital. Well, from what I've been reading, you can have your birthing partner with you. They might not be able to join you until your slightly later stages of labour. But I think we just need to reassure ourselves with some of the statistics around this, because fundamentally, very few newborn babies are being affected by coronavirus. And if they are, they're not showing any symptoms. So we know that they're not a group which are highly at risk. And my dad, unfortunately, this is personal experience this week, not coronavirus, but was rushed to hospital on Monday and for an emergency operation, and actually said it was really efficient, because now the hospitals are so locked down in terms of who enters and who leaves, that actually it's a much more slicker process. It's much more efficient, and it feels much safer. And so he actually didn't mind, and he was one of the 12-week category that can't leave the house. So we were all a bit worried about his exposure to coronavirus, and in fact he felt that there was no exposure by going into a hospital for a different reason. And so that, I think, is quite reassuring in itself, because we've got to trust in our NHS staff, because they are phenomenal, and they are incredibly phenomenal when you're in hospital and you are having a baby. And so they will still be offering you that level of service. But all I can tell you is that our anxiety and our fears and our worries are much worse than the reality of going into labour. And I know that kind of we all worry about the pain element. And I would say that if you can really master the breathing, it's probably one of the most powerful drugs that there is to really, so take a little bit of this time and really think about how you can kind of practice that breathing to get ready for when you do enter that hospital and you do go into labour. So I'm hoping that my personal story this week has maybe helped reassure you that actually hospitals are a safe place to be, and when you're going in for a different reason, and that we were all really anxious, and we were all kind of scared of the outcome when we're going into hospital to have a baby. And when you kind of have the baby, you may not be able to have the same level of service from a personal service from your midwife and your health visitors coming out to see you, but they're doing video calls. And so you'll still be able to kind of have those same discussions or any kind of issues or fears that you have with them. But I would say, listen to your body. So NHS advice is recommended that if you've had a fairly straightforward labour and birth, nothing to kind of no third degree tears or anything like that, then you need to really wait for 6 to 8 weeks for that check. Now, it's how you feel as well, because we all feel differently when we've had a baby. And so if you don't feel quite right, then I wouldn't rush out to start exercising. But guidance says after your check, roughly around about 8 weeks. If you've had a cesarean, then NHS guidance is around about 12 weeks. All I would say is I would stay away from anything high impact. Think about when you were pregnant. Think about what you didn't feel comfortable doing when you were pregnant. So I didn't feel pregnant when I was pregnant comfortable doing a HIIT class. I didn't want to do lots of high impact. I didn't want to do any running. Didn't want to do any jumping. And so I would always start my exercise when I start back again after having had a baby. I would really kind of regress it back to the basics, and I wouldn't really try to start too kind of advanced. Now, if you were a triathlete or a marathon runner before you were pregnant, then great, then you know your body's going to obviously come back to that a little bit quicker. But I would just listen to your body. I tore my stitches, I think, after 8 weeks with my second child, chasing my first one on his scooter, and I felt fine until that moment. And so anything as small as that, suddenly just sprinting off down the street, can have some form of damage or impact. And so I would always say, just listen to how you feel internally and externally, and start off very, very gentle. Stretching, resistance bands are really great. If you're breastfeeding, you've still got relaxing in your body, so you're a little bit kind of stretchier. And so when you stretch, you don't want to overstretch the muscles or the ligaments. If you are breastfeeding, then and you go for a really heavy workout, I mean, it's probably unlikely in lockdown at the moment, unlikely when you've just had a baby, you're going to go and try and smash it straight off, but you'd get a lot of lactic acid in your body, and so therefore it might make your breast milk taste a little bit kind of sour. And so often we recommend that you feed and then you do exercise, and then you also won't feel quite so uncomfortable either. And so there are little things there that you can just think about and just kind of really start to kind of get back into it nice and gently. Don't rush it. You know what, your body is going to get back to normal. You're going to get there. It's going to take time, but don't rush it, because I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves and anxiety around our bodies. And actually, it's just given the gift of life, which is one of the most amazing things that you can do. And so nurture it and be kind to it, because it doesn't, you don't need to kind of be going out and suddenly thinking, gosh, I've got to lose the weight or anything like that. You don't need to do that. It'll happen. It just will. You'll be busy, you know, run off your feet with the kids, with a new baby, and it will just happen as a byproduct. So please don't kind of have too much guilt or stress around that, particularly when we can't do as much exercise in lockdown at the moment.
That's great. I think that's very reassuring as well. So thank you. And finally, what other advice do you have for mums who are struggling with anxiety right now?
So I'm going to give you some of the things that I do. So I've had a couple of periods, as you know, of quite kind of severe periods of anxiety and mental health issues. And so a couple of things that I've been told that really work for me. If you're struggling to get sleep at night, have a bath or a shower just before bed, and don't fully dry your skin, because when you're damp and you're nice and warm, your skin releases its sleep endorphin, so that helps you fall asleep. Really high impact exercise can make your heart race, and if you're anxious and your heart is a little bit kind of racier than normal anyway, it can make you feel worse. So I would opt for the kind of yoga, Pilates, the stretching, to try and help relax our body. If you've got that mind of those anxious thoughts where they're just kind of on a carousel in your head, try and think about a big cloud above you, a big black cloud, and every time you breathe in, you breathe out, you exhale those thoughts, and they go into that cloud, and it moves further over into the horizon, so until you can hardly see it at all. And really try and think about the breathing. So the longer we can take a breath in, and we count in our mind when we breathe in, the longer we can exhale. And challenge yourself, can you get to 10? Can I count to 10 whilst I'm breathing in? And not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, a real kind of 1, 2, 3, 4 with those breaths, because as soon as you focus on the counting, you're no longer focusing on the anxiety. And so naturally then you start to unwind and you start to kind of unravel. I think that mental health is a really big concern at the moment in lockdown, and I think that we have to reach out and we have to tell people, because try to make sure that you're getting daily contact. So we're sat here today on a webinar on a Zoom call, and we can do that with our friends and we can do that with our family. And again, get those scheduled in, and don't be afraid to say, actually, I'm not feeling that great today. Because once we share it, it's almost like it dissipates in some way. So it actually makes us feel better when we start to kind of share those things. But also don't be afraid to kind of talk to your GP. They are doing virtual calls and video calls, and you can still get the same. In fact, I think it's a little bit more efficient at the moment when you want to see a GP, because there's not those kind of queues of people in appointment waiting rooms, and so actually you can have a really kind of good personal chat with them, and so they can still help you and still support you even if they kind of you're not physically in the room. So I think it's really important to keep talking, keep thinking about those kind of little tricks and exercises that I've just told you that I do. I also love laying in bed at night and I think about my toes as if they're really heavy and they're tingly, and I really force that feeling to move up my body, and so by the time you get to about my thighs, I'm asleep, because I've imagined that they're so heavy and they're so tingly and warm and nice, and they're sinking into that bed, and I focus so much of my mind on dragging that feeling up through my body that actually I never get to my head, I'm always asleep. So that's another really nice way, because sleep really makes us feel better. So if we can try and get enough sleep, and it's really hard as a mum, I know, I've got children in my bed, people getting up and down all night, you know, even now mine are 4 and 7. In fact, I think my sleep is worse than when they were babies now, because they constantly tell me I need a wee, can you come with me, it's dark, you know, can I get in with you? I had a bad dream. I've got growing pains. My knees are hurting. You know, it's just a litany of things all through the night, every single night. And so you need to be a little bit kind to yourself, because if we don't get the sleep and we haven't got the energy the next day, then we can start to feel a little bit more kind of anxious. And so that's why it's really important to take some time out for you. And that's why it's okay to give your kids some TV, or to do whatever it is that you need to do to give yourself a little break from it. Because if you don't have the break, then we're not going to be as good a parent as if we actually do something for ourselves. And it's better that we're happy, it's better that we're healthy, and than it is to, you know, worry too much about the pressures of society at the moment and whether we're kind of sticking to all those great parenting things we're doing. We're doing what we can do to get by, right? And that's the important thing, is that everybody comes out of this, you know, and actually survives this, rather than worrying about whether they're getting too much TV. I know that I've got a 7-year-old, he's homeschooling. I've got a 4-year-old who hasn't gone to school yet. You know, what can I do between the two? Unfortunately, the 4-year-old is watching more Paw Patrol than I'm comfortable with, but it's the only way I can get through the schooling with the older one. And so I do what I've got to do. Otherwise, I would just, you know, my mind would explode. So just be kind. We can't do it all. We're not superwomen, and we've got to let something go. And whatever it is you let go, you know what, just let it go. Don't beat yourself up about it, because we are all in this together and we are all surviving. So hopefully there's some helpful hints and tips there from my own personal experience.
Brilliant. That's fantastic, Claire. Thank you so much. I think really, you know, practical advice, suggestions, things that I'm certainly going to take away with me. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you. And if you haven't already, check out Claire's website, movementformums.com. Loads of great articles and tips, and of course you can register for the 15-minute workouts, and you've got Instagram as well.
Yeah, I'm at Movement for Mums everywhere, and Insta, Facebook, everywhere. And yeah, the workouts are free, so come and join me. And you can try it. If you don't like it, you can try something else. You know what? That's the great thing, isn't it, about doing it online? And you don't have to spend any money on it to see whether you like it. So I think that's another nice one as well. So you can kind of see if it works for you. So yes,
brilliant.
I just did a workout just before this, really, so I'm still in my gym top. I didn't have time to some lunch and trying to, you know, freshen up. I was like, right, I'm going to have to stay in the gym top, really. So there's me moving on my top.
Great.
Thank you so
Thank you, Claire.
I really hope that you know, people enjoy this webinar and some of those hints and tips.
Brilliant, thank you. And that brings us to a close for this webinar. Our next webinar is going to be focusing on mental wellbeing for teenagers, and Dr. Amanda Gummel will be joining us again for that. And in the meantime, everybody keep safe and keep well. Thank you.